Welcome to the only daily podcast focusing on compliance news of the day. Each morning, start your day with a cup of coffee and Tom Fox, the voice of compliance, to hear about 4 of the top compliance, corruption, or leadership stories you will need to start your day. The Daily Compliance News is a production of the Compliance Podcast Network.
First, a word from our sponsor. The Daily Compliance News for October 4, 2023, the SEC had a busy week edition. And we begin with that story from Bloomberg, Matt Levine opining that the SEC had a pretty wild week last week because it was the end of the government's fiscal year. And there was a lot of high-dollar enforcement actions. As the Wall Street Journal noted, Wall Street's top regulator on Friday brought in $218 million in fines, roughly 10% of its latest annual budget. We had the SEC whistleblower case, which Matt Kelly and I take up in this week's Compliance Into the Weeds. We had messaging compliance. We had SPAC projections. Of course, we had an FCPA case. So lots of big FCPA, or rather SEC cases. Next up, in a very interesting twist, the ex-CEO of Abercrombie & Fitch stands accused of exploiting men at sex events he hosted around the world. A BBC investigation found an organized network used a middleman to recruit adult young men for events with former CEO Mike Jeffries and his partner Matthew Smith, and with some alleging they were abused. We've heard lots of stories about women being abused in this manner, but this is the first one I can recall that involved men, certainly with a major corporate CEO involved. Next up, from Reuters, Elon Musk was ordered by a U.S. judge to face most of a lawsuit claiming he defrauded former Twitter shareholders last year by waiting too long to disclose that he had invested in the social media company. In a decision made public, Judge Andrew Carter said shareholders in the proposed class action could try to prove Musk intended to defraud them by waiting 11 days past an SEC commission deadline to reveal he had purchased over 5% of Twitter shares. And our final story comes to us from the Financial Times. It asks, how do you estimate Chinese corruption? How much graft is there in China's bureaucracy? Quite a lot. And apparently it rises with seniority, even as Xi Jinping's corruption crackdown seems to have moderated things. In China, it's referred to as gray income. So institutional corruption does apparently exist in China, as many U.S. companies have come to grief for paying bribes and then getting caught under the FCPA. The Daily Compliance News is a production of the Compliance Podcast Network and a proud member of C-Suite Radio. Thanks so much for listening. I hope you'll join me again tomorrow.